Introduction. Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None is one of the best-selling mystery novels of all time. Published in 1939, it tells the story of 10 strangers who are lured to an isolated island under false pretenses, only to be killed one by one. The novel is a masterpiece of psychological suspense and explores themes of justice, guilt, and retribution. The title comes from an old nursery rhyme that ominously predicts the demise of each character. Setting. The story is set on Soldier Island, a remote and isolated landmass off the coast of Devon, England. The guests arrive at a lavish mansion, owned by the mysterious Mr. and Mrs. Owen, whom none of them have ever met. As the story unfolds, they find themselves trapped with no means of communication with the outside world, making their predicament all the more terrifying. Characters. Justice Lawrence Wargrave, a retired judge with a reputation for delivering harsh sentences. Vera Claythorne, a young governess hired as a secretary. Philip Lombard, a former soldier of fortune, brought in for unspecified reasons. Dr. Edward Armstrong, a successful doctor with a drinking problem. William Blore, a former police inspector now working as a private detective. Emily Brent, a rigid and pious spinster. General John MacArthur, a retired Army general. Anthony Marston, a wealthy and reckless young man. Thomas Rogers, the butler. Ethel Rogers, the housekeeper and wife of Thomas Rogers. Chapter-by-chapter summary. Chapters 1 to 2. Arrival on Soldier Island. The 10 guests, all from different backgrounds, arrive on Soldier Island, lured by invitations from a mysterious host named U.N. Owen, a play on unknown. They are served by Mr. and Mrs. Rogers, the only servants on the island. That evening, after dinner, a gramophone record plays, accusing each guest of having committed murder. The guests are shocked but dismiss the accusations as some cruel joke. Chapter 3 to 4. The First Death. Anthony Marston, a young and reckless man, drinks a poisoned cocktail and dies suddenly. The group is stunned, but some speculate it was a tragic accident. That night, Ethel Rogers is found dead in her bed, presumably from a sleeping pill overdose. Panic begins to set in as they realize 2 people have already died in a pattern resembling the nursery rhyme, 10 Little Soldiers. Chapters 5 to 6. Isolation and Fear. The group discovers that the island is completely cut off. There is no way to escape. General MacArthur, feeling doomed, confesses that he sent a subordinate to his death during the war out of jealousy. Later, he is found dead, struck in the head. The guests now accept that a murderer is among them. Chapters 7 to 8. Paranoia grows. Wargrave takes charge of the investigation, questioning everyone. They search the island and find no one else present. The nursery rhyme continues to dictate their fates, and they realize the killer must be one of them. Tension and suspicion mount. Chapters 9 to 10. Dr. Armstrong's doubts. Rogers, the butler, is found dead the next morning while chopping wood. Emily Brent is later found dead by an injection of cyanide. Her death mimics the nursery rhyme, intensifying their fears. Chapters 11 to 12. Halfway to death. The remaining guests are now convinced the murderer is one of them. They lock themselves in their rooms, but Justice Wargrave is found shot in the head. The survivors are in complete terror, as the killer remains unknown. Chapters 13 to 14. A Deadly Game. Armstrong disappears. Vera Claythorne and Lombard find his body washed up on shore, assuming he was drowned. The two now believe Blore is the murderer. Shortly afterward, Blore is found dead, crushed by a large clock thrown from a window. Chapters 15 to 16. The last two survivors. Vera and Lombard, the only ones left, grow increasingly suspicious of each other. Vera ultimately shoots Lombard in self-defense. Thinking herself safe, she enters the house and finds a noose prepared. In a trance-like state, she hangs herself. Epilogue and final revelation. After the authorities arrive, they find 10 dead bodies and no suspect. A letter in a bottle later reveals that Justice Wargrave orchestrated the murders. As a self-appointed executioner, he punished those who escaped justice, faking his own death in the process. His confession explains that he had long desired to execute criminals beyond the courtroom. He planned everything meticulously, ensuring that no one would survive to tell the tale. Themes and analysis. 1. Justice and morality. Wargrave sees himself as a force of justice, punishing those he deems guilty. However, the novel questions whether vigilante justice is truly just. 2. Guilt and psychological torment. Each character grapples with guilt over past crimes. Vera Claythorne, in particular, is haunted by the child she let drown, driving her to madness. 3. Fear and paranoia. Christie masterfully builds suspense as the characters turn on each other. The novel explores how fear can erode rationality. 4. The inevitability of death. The nursery rhyme serves as an eerie prophecy, emphasizing the inescapability of death.